Hi, I'm Nicole Zeller, and welcome to Nicole's Notes. This is where I try to find clear thinking about the messiest things. I'm about to tell you a story that spans 50 years. It's a story about being told, at age 4, that you probably won't make it to first grade. It's a story about a village that decided you were worth keeping alive anyway. It's a story about learning to hide a disease so well that the world forgot you were sick. It's a story about losing everything, your weight, your identity, your future, and thinking you were done. And then it's a story about getting a miracle drug that was supposed to fix everything. Except it broke me in ways I never expected. This is the before. This is the 50 years I spent preparing to die, building a life I never thought I'd get to live, and learning what it means to survive when survival is supposed to kill you. I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis in 1976 when I was 4 years old. The doctors told my parents not to expect me to make it to first grade. Well, I made it. I made it to 54. I made it to a career. I made it to a foundation that raised $3.5 million. I made it to having a lab named after me. I made it to climbing mountains with only 40% lung function. I made it to being a public face of hope while privately wondering if I was going to make it to tomorrow. And through all of that, I never knew a future was coming, not until the drug worked. So this series is divided into 2 parts, this archive, the pre-miracle years, and then a separate series about what happened after, about the psychological whiplash of suddenly having a future when you've spent 50 years preparing to die, about learning to live undiluted when the disease isn't supposed to kill you anymore. But before we get there, you need to understand who I was. You need to understand what I survived, and you need to understand what it took to build a life when the timeline was always finite. This is the story of how I learned to hide, how I learned to perform, how I learned to be fierce, how I learned to survive. Starting with a 4-year-old angry girl who had no idea that she was about to become the foundation for everything that came after. Welcome to The Miracle Problem. This is episode 1, Before We Knew It Was a Death Sentence. Today, we're diving into the year I was 4 years old and absolutely furious at everyone around me. We're talking about the 4 years nobody could figure out what was wrong with my body. We're talking about a med student's Hail Mary diagnosis. And we're talking about the moment a doctor told my parents not to expect me to make it to first grade. This is the origin story of who I became. I spent 50 years preparing to die. And it all started here in 1976 when I was 4 years old and had no idea that the angry little girl I was becoming would be the foundation for everything that came after. So let's go back to the beginning. I was born in 1972, so obviously that means I'm 54 now. But the real starting point is 1976, when I was 4 years old. What I remember is being shuffled to doctors a lot, like constantly. And I was pissed off. Not like I'm throwing a tantrum angry, I mean angry in this deep, confused way. My arms were crossed, my head was down, my face was furrowed, I had a grumpy look all the time. And it was because I was 4 and I barely had language for anything. These adults just kept putting me in cars, dragging me to clinics, and doing things to my body that hurt, or were uncomfortable, or just made no sense. Ugh, and I had diarrhea all the time. I was literally in the bathroom constantly. My stomach hurt, like, a lot. I don't think I understood even then that this wasn't normal. I mean, I was 4. I thought this was just what it meant to be alive. My parents were exhausted and confused, and my mom felt like she was being judged. Like maybe it was something she did wrong, which is bullshit, by the way. She did the best she could, and so did my dad. She would rub my back when I was having a coughing fit. She'd make me a bed on the couch. She'd get me apple juice because at least I would drink that. And I drank so much apple juice. I do not drink it to this day because of this. And that's what I remember about being 4. Apple juice, doctor's offices, and this rage that I could not name. The doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. We're talking 4 years of symptoms before anyone figured it out. 4 years of blood work, x-rays, medications, consultations, and nobody could pin it down. The medical system was just stuck. And my parents were so exasperated. My mom was feeling blamed, and I was a small, angry 4-year-old with 0 personal autonomy and no way to understand why my body was betraying me. That's the thing about being a sick kid. You don't have language for it. You just know that adults keep doing things to you, and you don't know why. You're furious about it because you're 4. You can barely articulate your own name, but you know unfairness, and you know your body isn't yours. And then, and I love this part because it's so perfectly random, a med student came through the clinic. He'd just been reading about this disease called cystic fibrosis. He was a student, so he was probably overeager, right? Just learned something new and wanted to try it out. And he looked at me, this angry, failing to thrive 4-year-old with no language for what was happening to her, and he said, "Hey, I think these symptoms match cystic fibrosis. We should do a sweat test." It was a Hail Mary. It was a shot in the dark. It was this med student thinking, you know what? Let's just try this, since we've tried everything else. Guess what? The sweat test came back positive. Cystic fibrosis. That was the name. That was the thing that had been stealing my childhood for 4 years without anyone knowing what to call it. Now we knew what we were dealing with. Once we had the diagnosis, everything moved fast. My parents learned that cystic fibrosis creates an abnormal amount of mucus in the body. It blocks your airways, it blocks your pancreas. Basically, it's like your body is making the exact substance that's going to suffocate you. So we started flying to Vancouver General monthly. Not for fancy treatment or anything, but for education. My parents needed to learn how to do this clapping therapy. They needed to learn how to beat the mucus out of my lungs. 12 different positions. That's how many positions there are in clapping therapy. 12 positions where someone holds you and claps on your back in a specific rhythm so the mucus loosens up enough that you can cough it out. I was 4, then 5, then 6, and someone was always clapping on my back and my chest. I remember all of them. I'm upside down, I'm over their lap, I'm on a chair. I just remember the feeling of all of them. Some days I literally fell asleep during the therapy. Your own body is being percussed like you're an instrument. And I was so exhausted that I just drifted off. And here's the thing that actually gets me now. My entire family learned how to do this. My relatives, my uncle and aunt, my grandparents. This village I grew up in just pitched in. They learned the 12 positions, they showed up, and they kept me alive. That's not a small thing. That's not just, oh, family helps out. That's a village deciding collectively that this kid is worth keeping alive. And we're going to learn how to do this specific, repetitive, somewhat uncomfortable thing over and over again because that's what it takes. And we're going to do it morning and night, every day of her life. I grew up in a village, and that village was my life support system. But here's what else I remember. I was also being held down and force-fed these disgusting synthetic enzymes. Because CF blocks your pancreas, which means your body can't digest food properly. So they literally had to force these horrible tasting pills and powders into me so that I could absorb any nutrition at all. I hated it. I hated so much. I hated the taste. I hated that nobody was asking me if I wanted to do this. I was already furious at my body for not working right. And now I had to be furious at the treatment too. I missed a ton of school. And I was an angry kid because I had 0 personal autonomy. My body wasn't mine. It belonged to the disease and the treatment and the medical system and well-meaning relatives who were trying to keep me alive. But my parents, bless them, they tried to keep my life as normal as possible. Here's where it gets good. We'd get to take one of my cousins on the plane to Vancouver. Not both of them, just one. Which, by the way, was a whole thing in terms of who got to go and who didn't. But one cousin would come with me. And if I was good at the clinic, if I cooperated, if I didn't cry too much, if I let them do all their tests, we would go to the White Spot for a pirate pack. I have such fond memories of that restaurant, not because the food was incredible, but because it meant I had a good checkup. It meant my lungs were cooperating. It meant I'd survived another month. And to this day, I treat myself to a lovely lunch after any clinic. I was 4, 5, 6 years old, and the measure of a successful trip to the hospital was a pirate pack at White Spot. One summer, I was 6. We're at the airport. I'm running through it, happy as a clam, completely thrilled to be getting on an airplane. And I smashed my head directly into a kiosk. Just bam! Right into it. I was bleeding everywhere. I needed stitches. But I got to stay overnight in Vancouver with a pool. Yeah. Do you understand what this meant to a 6-year-old with cystic fibrosis? I got stitches and a hotel pool. My one cousin who came with me was so excited. My other cousin who didn't come was absolutely furious with jealousy. I cracked my head open and won the lottery. That's what I remember from my childhood. Not just the hard stuff. The hard stuff mixed with these bizarre small mercies. The pirate pack, the hotel pool, my mom's hands, my relatives learning the 12 positions, a med student taking a shot in the dark. A village that decided I was worth keeping alive, one clapping therapy session at a time. I need you to understand. When my parents got the diagnosis in 1976, when I was 4 years old, the doctor sat them down and told them something. Don't expect her to make it to first grade. That's what they were told. That's what they had to hold in their minds. That this angry, failing to thrive little girl probably wasn't going to make it to first grade. Which, by the way, was coming up fast. I don't know how you hold that information as a parent. I don't know how you rub your kid's back and make her a bed on the couch and teach your extended family the 12 positions, knowing doctors told us she probably won't make it to first grade. But my parents did. They held it and they kept showing up. My mom kept rubbing my back. My dad was making me laugh. My relatives kept learning the 12 positions. My uncle and aunt pitched in. My grandparents showed up and the village kept me alive. I made it to first grade. I made it to high school. I made it to university. And I made it to 54. I made it past every single deadline the doctors gave me. That angry 4-year-old girl, she didn't disappear. She's still in me. She's the one who decided that if my body was going to fight me, I was going to fight back harder. She's the one who decided that she didn't care what the doctor said. She's the one who years later would join sports teams and discover that when you move your body fast enough, the mucus comes out on its own and suddenly you're not a sick kid, you're an athlete. But that anger, the lack of autonomy, that became the foundation of who I am, the framework for everything that comes after. Because I learned very early that my body wasn't mine, that I didn't have control, that adults were going to do things to me and I couldn't stop. And I had to be furious about it or I would break. So I chose fury. I chose to be fierce. And I built my entire life on that. This is the origin story of Nicole Zeller. Not the miracle, not the drug, not the future I'm still learning how to live in. This is the angry 4-year-old girl who was told she wouldn't make it to first grade and who decided that was unacceptable and who kept fighting anyway. Next week, we're going to talk about what it looked like when that village kept showing up, when the clapping therapy shifted, when sports gave me back my body, when I realized that I could actually build a life, even if that life was supposed to end before I got too attached to it. This is what that looked like for me. This is how it started. I didn't make it to first grade because a doctor said I would. I made it to first grade because a village decided I was worth keeping alive. One back rub and one pirate pack at a time. 54 years later, I'm still here, still fierce, still fighting. Thank you for listening. I'm Nicole Zeller. Stay fierce. The world will adjust.